Hi everyone, from me, Brent Graham, 9 o'clock on a Thursday night. It's time for the Handicap Rugby Chat that matters. Well, we got an excellent panel in here tonight, and I'm scared to ask, but I reckon if they added the ages together, you'd probably get to my age. So I'm not going to ask that, guys. Please don't. I don't want to go there. But good to have you boys on the show. Returning after a few weeks from his debut, where we got rave reviews about him. It's Darren Holiday at Darren Holiday on Twitter. Darren, how are you, mate? Looking forward to a big weekend of rugby punting, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Brent. Lots of games to get through. Hopefully make some money this weekend.
Right, well, I've got a feeling a couple of your mates are watching the show. Daniel saying, whatever happens, I hope that Darren Holiday is not on tonight. He's the worst.
Wow.
Nothing like that. And then Dylan promptly coming in and agreed with the statement. So I very much enjoy that. And then thoughts on sports. Neil, I know you've been quite hectic work-wise on that, but still managed to follow your punting. I have seen that you're a little bit quiet on Twitter, but hoping to get back into it with a bang this weekend.
Yeah, Brent, I'm coming out absolutely guns blazing this weekend. It's been a bit of a hectic time for me, hence my sort of lack of appearances on the handicap. But the boys are in for a treat tonight. I've got some massive fancies, so looking forward to share this with all the listeners out there.
Excellent. We're looking forward to that. Mark Dunphy coming in, a nice shirt. Brent, Mark, of course, got me this one. Yeah, I love this Leinster shirt. I wear the other one a little bit more because it's a triple XL and this is a double XL, and unfortunately that's the way I've been going these days. Well, anyway, boys, plenty of rugby to get stuck into. I'm just going to go down to the first handicaps. I think we'll start off with a bit of Super Rugby Pacific. Thoroughly enjoying this tournament, I must say. I didn't think I would because the last couple of years I haven't been that into it, but I have been enjoying it. And Neil, I'm going to start with you. We got the first game, Moana Pacifica, who've yet to win a match in Super Rugby. They're plus 15.5 against the Highlanders. And we've got a points line of 64.5, which, gee, it is pretty high.
Yeah, it's come out at a bit of a high line, but I think it's pretty rightly justified, especially with the way that the Super Rugby games have gone on. We've seen that the new laws have sort of kicked in. The refs are really much looking to speed up the game. Both sides are sort of equal opportunity to score points. I think for Moana Pacifica, this is probably a game that I feel that they would be eyeing out. They obviously didn't put up too much of a contest last weekend against the Hurricanes and a sort of 59-0 drubbing here. But this is an interesting game. It's sort of getting dubbed as a home game for Pacifica, getting played at empty stadium over in Auckland. But I've got a sneaky suspicion where the points line sort of drift off a bit this weekend. So I've been actually eyeing out a couple of unders players here. So I'm actually going to take a stab at the unders under 54.5 as my sort of favorite of the weekend. My favorite in this fixture rather. That's 64.5. I think that's some cracking value. I really do expect sort of a bit of tired legs just about there. Again, we're sort of getting played at a lot of high intensity rugby. You got the ball in play sort of sitting at about 60 minutes all games. So that's got to take a toll on the players at some point in the fixture. And then if I had to have a stab at the handicap, I do think that Pacifica offer a bit of value over on the spread in this one. Highlanders, I've mentioned before, I'm just not too impressed with them this season. To be honest, this lineup, it is looking stronger than the previous Highlanders lineups that they have put up. But I think that Pacifica have been sort of targeting this game as sort of one where they can really just put in a performance. A couple of players back. I really like McClutchy back at 10. He's proved his worth for Hawke's Bay over in sort of the NPC over there. And also a big boost is Levi Muir over in the 13 jumper, who offers so much threat there. Made a Barbarians debut towards the end of last season over at Twickenham. So they should offer enough in attack. Plenty. I think they should sort of show up in defence. I'm not too impressed with this Highlanders attack. So I think that under 64.5 is a good way to go. It's obviously a bit nerve-wracking taking in unders when these two sides play, but I think that is the way to go. And so more confidence on the unders, but and slightly tentative on the Pacifica Plus.
Right, let's go to Darren on this one. Darren, anything strong in the opener for you?
Not too many strong fancies. Maybe look at Highlanders unders. I saw the line was about 40.5, so maybe go under 40.5, but nothing major in this game.
Right, just a shout out to Oracle Rugby. He's not on this week, but he cleaned Henrik and I out last week. I lost money against him on the Sharks Scarlets match, and Henrik, I can't remember the game, but Henrik lost, so we both had to pay the Oracle. Oracle in good form. So Oracle, I know you're going to be watching the show in the morning. Well done to you there. And I'm quite pleased you're not on tonight to take any more of my bucks. Right, let's stay with you, Darren. We got the Reds up against the Crusaders. This game exactly where I handicapped it on the Good for the Game forum. The Reds plus 9.5, although it did open plus 12.5. So there has been money coming here for the Reds. And Darren, I've got to say, I kind of agree with that money that's come for them. I think 12.5 was too big. But at 9.5, I'm starting to think the bookies are about right.
Yeah, once again, I'm looking at the Reds team total. I think it was 23.5 the last time I checked. I think that's pretty good value, especially in Brisbane. They're normally very, very good at home. So, yeah, I would definitely back the Reds to get over 23.5.
It's funny you say that because I just posted the Good for the Game forum literally about an hour ago, and that's exactly the bet I went for Darren, was the Reds over 23.5. And I had a look at the weather in Brisbane, because one thing about Brisbane, the humidity can often be a killer. And well, if the weather site that I was looking at is correct, the humidity levels should be fairly low, and it should be perfect conditions. So I'm with you there. You know, look at this Crusaders team. I'm not convinced about it at the moment, and I think the Reds will get to their 24 points. So Darren and I aligned on that one. Let's see what Thoughts on Sports has got for us.
Yeah, Brent, this is a game I've been sort of eyeing out for most of the weekend. I was quite quick out the blocks early in the week. I snapped up some Reds 12.5. I even got 13.5 in some places. So I guess you could say I'm fairly pleased with the sort of handicap positioning that I'm currently at. But a bet that I do like, I always think that Brisbane it does play host to sort of some nice fairly attacking rugby. I do understand sort of your sentiment for that Reds over 23.5, and it is something that I probably would take. But I think it's drifted out to about 25.5 now, which maybe puts me a little bit on the back seat here. But I've found out some Crusaders 35.5. I'm going to take an understab on this. For me, this Crusader side, it's a quality outfit. I'm never going to ever doubt the Crusaders in these types of fixtures. But I just look at the combinations that they have selected. Very much a rookie 9 that they've selected in Noah Hoffen. He's a fantastic player. I have followed him sort of through the ranks in New Zealand on the 20 journey. And then also for me, the big sort of killer here is Fergus Burke getting picked at 15. He's a great footballer in his own right, but he's very much a 10, plays sort of to the line, sort of plays the true style of rugby. He's not going to sort of score those mercurial tries that I guess you could say sort of a Will Jordan or David Havili could offer from the back there. So I do expect sort of a less of attacking threat from the Crusaders, especially with sort of those deep kicks that the Reds sort of can pop onto the Crusaders here. So very much less of attacking threat. I really do think that the Reds will be up for this fixture in Brisbane. Reds have been sort of so in Super Rugby, yet to sort of hit their straps, and I do expect a massive performance from them here. So Reds on the handicap. I would still advise definitely a little bit of value still in that 9.5. Lesser, obviously, when you could have gotten 12.5, 13.5 early doors. But the main interest for me is that Crusaders under 35.5. I think that's an absolute cracker.
Right, Reverend coming in. He's travelling probably to work in New Zealand. They're saying Crusaders can still defend. And it comes across there as a low-scoring game for him. Right, let's stay with you, Neil, and move on to the Fijian Drua minus 2.5 against the Rebels. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, the fact that Fiji are playing in front of their home crowd here, where they beat the Crusaders just a few weeks back, has swayed the bookies here. But I've actually been quite impressed with the Rebels at times this season as well. And I made the Rebels slight favourites for this game. What's your view on this one?
Yeah, Brett, I think full credit to the Rebels, especially the Super Rugby season. I don't have the sort of stats on hand, but I would guess I would have covered at least 4 out of the 5 spreads on offer. So some big sort of work gone on in the preseason. Lots of sort of no-name brands. And I say that as they're not sort of familiar to the general rugby viewing public. They aren't sort of the household names, but there seems to be a lot of good things behind the scene. They've very much been able to put together quite a squad of continuity. So very much week in, week out, very similar selections happening. Big boost for them this week in welcoming back Reece Hodge and Carter Gordon. But for me, I just don't think Reece Hodge is a fantastic Super Rugby player. He always seems to raise his level, but when he pulls in that Wallaby shirt, so I don't get sort of too much high spirit if I was the Rebels back in this game. But for me, the Fijian Drua, they play 1 or 2 games a year over in Fiji. That crowd goes absolutely ballistic. They could be fielding their sort of under 21 to 21 side, and it doesn't matter to me. This Drua side, they sort of target these fixtures week in, week out. We saw what happened in Sotoko a couple of weeks ago when they were able to overturn the Crusaders when they were about 15-point underdogs. They're playing host to a Rebel side, which traditionally are quite poor on the road. They usually sort of stand up for the games over at AMG Stadium in Melbourne here. So you're getting sort of a -1.5, -2.5 spread, and I think that the value just has to be on the Fijian Drua to win this fixture.
Right, well, it certainly is a very excitable home crowd. I think it was a conductor posted something after they went against Crusaders where they showed the crowd and there was a tree somewhere in there. And I'm assuming it was the right game I'm talking about. And the tree they were shaking that tree. It was going absolutely crazy. Darren, what do you think of this game? Because, I mean, playing the Fijian draw there in front of that crowd must be pretty intimidating.
Yeah, for me, this game I look at and I just see points. I expect a pretty high-scoring game from both sides. So this is probably my bet of the weekend. Rebels over 27.5. I fancy both teams to score 35 plus. So I'm expecting plenty of points. The Rebels have covered most of their caps and they have been playing pretty well. Haven't been getting the results they've deserved, but they have been putting in some good performances so far this season. So
yeah, I saw your tweet. You said, in fact, I did reference it in the Good for the Game preview, which I posted earlier, because the line has moved since, I think you might still be able to get 27.5, but I see generally 28.5 around. And I was happy to go for that as well. I like you. I'm seeing points in this game, but you came out quite confidently on Twitter with this one. And as you say, we pretty much could jump to the end of the show for your best bet, I think, eh?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, well, my wife bought me a nice cup of tea here, so nicely settled in for the remainder of the rugby chat. Let's stick with you, Darren. We'll go to the next game. It's the Chiefs up against the Blues in Hamilton. I actually priced this game. I thought the Chiefs would be slightly bigger favourites. I was leaning towards 5.5, which I think in retrospect was too high. But there was it sort of opened virtually choice. If anything, I think there's been a bit of money for the Chiefs. I've seen some -2.5 as well. But this should be the game of the weekend for me, Darren.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's going to be a very good game to watch. I do think the Chiefs have a slight edge being at home, and I just like the look of their pack far more than I like the Blues pack. I did see that Tui Pelota was back on the bench, but I don't think he was starting as far as I can remember. But the Blues seem to do a weird thing where they rest their All Black props and then bring them on at 60 or 50 minutes. I'm not quite sure why they seem to do that, but I think I would have to back the Chiefs on the handicap in this game.
Yeah, I must say I'm going Chiefs. And Neil, the bet I actually went for on the Good for the Game preview, and it's not available with a lot of bookmakers, but Sunbet offered is either team by 7 or less. I thought that was quite a big runner at 13-10. I'm expecting a close game, but handicap-wise, if I was going to take a handicap bet on this one, I'm leaning with Darren here towards the Chiefs.
Yeah, Brent, I think this is probably obviously the toughest pick of the weekend. As a sort of a diehard Blues fan over the years, you always just want to back them, especially in a close game away from home. You just feel that this could be the fixture where you sort of get a bit of a smug look on your face after the 80. You've backed an underdog, and that sort of pulls through from here. But for me, I sort of tend to, in these sorts of fixtures, I'm a little bit indecisive. I tend to go back to my rule of thumb is look to back the home side until proven otherwise. And I think that sort of sentiment lies definitely with the Chiefs. They've been the form side in this competition. The only reason I suspect that this handicap hasn't drifted out to sort of your 5.5 point region is just sort of the promise that the Blues can show and just sort of how they can produce on their day. And I guess the bookmakers sort of scatter through their team sheets and see the likes of the Rico Ioanis and the Bodenbrass and sort of get the jitters if they wanted to shift that handicap out a little bit. But for me, over at FMG Stadium in Hamilton, it's not a massive overs ground at all. So I'd be a bit tentative if you were looking for an overs play on the points here. Angus Gardner on the whistle, he's sort of a slightly neutral to overs referee for me here. This is going to be an absolute humbling, an absolute serious clash of styles here. The Chiefs don't tend to put opposition away. So I really think that either team by 7 or less is an absolute cracker. But just in the straight out handicaps here, I very much prefer the Chiefs sort of forward pack that they have produced here. Hopefully I'm not a big fan of Damian McKenzie at 10 just because I think he just offers so much from the back and sort of the attacking aspects. I prefer my 10 to just sort of focus on game management and just marshalling the forwards from sort of side to side and just sort of general play over there. But just I look at the side, it just seems like an absolute sort of nail biter, and it comes down to sort of the front five for me, and Chiefs edge that one for me. So tentative call, but definitely leaning the Chiefs -1.5 in this one.
Yeah, also leaning the Chiefs there as well. Johan actually came up with another bet, and I must say, Johan, this was what I was contemplating. It was either going to be Chiefs by 1 to 12 for me, or it was going to be the other team by 7 or less. And in the end, like Neil says, my love for the Blues probably end up swaying me a little bit there to give them a shot at winning the game. But that's certainly the other option is either team, I guess, that you fancy to win the game, to win by 1-12. I'll be surprised if this one really blows out. Darren, anything from you on this game? Oh, we've spoken about this game already with you.
Yeah.
Sorry, man, I'm mixing up my running order
No.
here. Let's stick with Neil then, and we're going to go on to the next game. Brumbies -9.5 against the Waratahs. Obviously bringing their bigger players back after resting them against the Crusaders last week. And here we got a points line. Neil, of 54.5.
Sure, Brent. The old age Aussie derby. So in previous years gone by, this was a massive sort of derby clash. I think it's sort of you put a bit of water on the fire in the past sort of couple of years where Brumbies have sort of been quite the dominant force when these two teams sort of matched up. But once again, the Waratahs, that was just sort of look the business, I guess you could say, on paper. I was sort of one of the early Waratahs backers at the start of the season. I was sneakily hoping that the bookmakers would be thoroughly underestimating them. And I was looking to snap up some fantastic value, but they just sort of haven't seemed to hit the strides that I expected them to. Whereas I guess for the Brumbies, you can say business as usual. They've been able to sort of seamlessly integrate a lot of youngsters throughout the likes of Tamati Tua over in the 12 jumper. He's just seemingly slotted in. Currie has also been another sort of superstar that's emerged out of Australian rugby in the 11 jumper there. Back at Brisbane, sort of very much sort of the Brumbies territory. They're an absolute sort of home wrecker. They love those performances at home. It's seriously tough to make a case for the Waratahs here. So it's definitely going to be a Brumbies -9.5 for me in this one.
Yeah, I must say, I also just posted the good for the game preview this evening. I went 9.5 as well. Had a look back at recent head-to-head record. And as you said, Brumbies have dominated. But at home, I think 3 of the last 4 games have been virtual blowouts for the Brumbies. And I must echo your thoughts really, Neil. I expected a lot more from the Waratahs this season, and they just haven't really delivered. But let's see if Darren's going to rubber stamp this one for us, or if he's going to go against us.
Yeah, no, I can't really disagree with anything you've said so far. I was expecting a lot more from the Waratahs so far this season. They've got plenty of good players, but it hasn't seemed to gel. Their forward pack seems to be a bit, not lightweight, but they haven't been performing as well as they could have. So once again, I'd have to back the Brumbies in Canberra. So I'd agree with the 9.5.
Agreeing with the 9.5 on the minus there. Rian, he's going the other way totally. Rian and Oracle, have they ever been in the same room together? Because Rian is ever seen in the same room together. Waratahs upset and beat the Brumbies. Reverend, on the other hand, reckons the Brumbies by 20. And the Crow tips Brumbies way too solid at home. Right, let's move on to the next game. And Darren, I'm going to stay with you. We've got a big handicap to talk about here. We've got the Hurricanes, who are resting a few players, minus 20.5 against the Western Force, who to me have also been a bit of a disappointment this season. And we've got a points line of 61.5.
This one has been a bit tough to call. I'm not too sure how the Hurricanes are going to do without their key players, but I would still back them at home to cover the 20, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. So I wouldn't be surprised, but if I had to pick one, I would go with the Hurricanes minus 20.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. I haven't done this preview yet, but initially I was obviously, when I started looking at this game at the start of the week, I was thinking Hurricanes full strength are going to absolutely blow them away. But Neil, 20.5 with a slightly diluted Hurricane side. I'm kind of with Darren there, just not knowing how the Hurricanes are actually going to perform without their big names.
Brent, this is probably my strongest fancy over in the Super Rugby Pacific. I'm going to completely oppose you two over there. I love the Western Force to cover the spread. I look at that Hurricane side, and they've rested players. But for me, the big thing is they've rested in sort of key positions. Artie Severe, you can't sort of underestimate the loss that he sort of brings into this Hurricane side. When that side's sort of down and out, he just really brings the fire, both in sort of attack and defense and leadership skills across the park. Then also just sort of looking to sort of the backs that they have. Brett Cameron coming into the number 10 jumper, it doesn't spring an awful lot of confidence for me. He's an absolute sort of sharpshooter, sort of your traditional 10, fantastic kicker, sort of out of hand, but he's very much not an attacking style 10. So I don't expect him to sort of spark too many attacks there. Obviously, you've got the likes of Geordie Barrett and Ben Sullivan who can perform absolute mercurial acts on their day, but also lots of sort of youth in the back three and in Daniel Silkinson and Harry Godfrey there. So very much sort of an up and coming type Hurricane side. And I saw what the Force were able to do against sort of a second string type blue side last weekend. It's going to be very much the same against the Hurricane side, arguably slightly weaker than that blue side that they played against. And this Force side there's plenty of quality scattered throughout. I love that halfback pairing of Gareth Simpson and Hamish Stewart. I've been a fan of Hamish Stewart from his Reds days in that 12 jumper. Massively solid on defense. He's got a fantastic ball carrying ability, great distribution skills, and yeah. So I just think that 21.5 for me, this is at least 5 or 6 points too big. I'm probably going to take some Force plus 14.5 because I do expect them to make a meal of this. So definitely, the strongest fantasy of the weekend is that Force plus 21.5.
Well, fortunately, I did announce there that I hadn't done the good for the game preview yet. So by no means bound to the Hurricanes, and I certainly nearly make a strong case there. And if I went with Darren's pick in the Rebels game, I think I'll definitely be going to be going for your pick there of the Force on the plus in this game. Nice, confident words. That brings us to the end of Super Rugby Pacific. I'll just see what the last comment is. Force points should arrive. Yeah, I agree with you there, Johan. That's something I'll certainly be looking at as well. Right, let's go on to the Heineken Champions Cup. We've, of course, got last 16 matches. I think I had a go at handicapping these, but as expected, I wasn't very close. I do battle a little bit with these European tournaments. Neil, I know you're a big fan of the Premiership, probably more than anything else in Europe, but do you follow the Champions Cup? Are you quite excited for this weekend as well?
No, Brent. If the Premiership had to be my main course, the Champions Cup is definitely the dessert. So, yeah, massive fan of the competition. I keep a firm watching on it. Definitely, I take a step back in the punting. Not saying I don't punt in the games, but the stakes are definitely significantly lower because I always look at the lines and I always feel like the bookmakers are just sort of spot on with those sort of caps that they come out. But it's definitely sort of a firm following of mine.
Right, well, let's start with you then in the first game. We've got the Leicester Tigers at home to Edinburgh, and that's minus 8.5, and we've got a points line here of 48.5. This is the only Friday night game.
Yeah, spot on. So it's the only Friday night game of the weekend for the Champions Cup. Absolute sort of cracking matchup. Edinburgh are just the type of side which is sort of they just love to disappoint. If you look at their lineup week in, week out, they just look so fantastic on paper. They've got such a sort of thrilling back three over in Darcy Graham, Duan van der Merwe and Buffelli over there. So much quality sort of backroom carriers in Mata and Hamish Watson. But they just never seem to sort of produce on the day. I'm not too sure if it's sort of a belief aspect or sort of a coaching aspect or whatnot. Whereas Tigers have already seemed to come and own in sort of the last two seasons. Obviously won the Premiership last season, sort of a good news story coming out of there. Fantastic off-season recruitment during the likes of Hundred Pollard over to Walford Road over there. But this fixture just screams at a bit of a red flag for me. 8.5 in a sort of a chilly evening over in Walford Road. I had a little bit of a brief glance at the conditions. It's looking a bit miserable over there, so I do expect that sort of Leicester forward pack. Lots of sort of big brutes over there to sort of take them over the line here. But I think this fixture is going to be a lot closer than people expect. So looking to get behind, that's Edinburgh plus 8.5 on this one.
Right, interesting. Quite a bit of, I would say, split decision on this game in the live chat. Darren, what are you going to do in this one?
I was looking at the unders for this game. Once again, I was looking at the weather. It seems to be a pretty miserable evening in Leicester. So I fancy a kick fest with Pollard steering his forward pack around the ground. I can see Leicester winning, but I wouldn't be too confident on the handicap either way. So I'd probably go for an unders in this particular game.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense there. Under 48.5 points is the line at the moment. And we're going to stay with you, Darren. Here we got Sharks. I haven't got points lines for any of the remaining Champions Cup games. If anyone in the live chat or whatever knows any, you can put them up. But I wasn't able to get any just before the game. Sharks minus 5.5, Darren, against Munster. I mean, Sharks, they fielded their box last week against the Scarlets. The money came for them. They were absolutely hopeless. They return home now. I've gone for them, but I almost feel bad going for them. I mean, I feel people must be going, what the hell is he doing going for the Sharks? But I just feel, they have put in one or two good performances when they've been at full strength, and I'm hoping this is another one. What are your views?
Yeah, I'm very much like you. I have no idea what to expect from the Sharks team. They're either really, really good or absolutely dreadful. You would think they should cover 5.5 at home, but you never know. 1 o'clock kickoff in Durban. Are they going to be up for this game, or are they going to put in another abject performance? I would say they should cover, but I have no strong feelings either way.
Right. Thoughts on sports? Anything strong on this game for you?
Yeah, Brent, I've sort of been tossing and turning over this fixture for a while. I think my head would have been in a better place had the Sharks sort of put in a little bit of a performance last weekend against Munster. Against the Scarlets. But if the Sharks had rolled over the Scarlets last weekend, we would have been getting sort of a 7.5, 8.5 points spread in this fixture, and that plays perfectly into my hands because I like the Sharks quite strongly here. I think that they're gonna put in a proper performance here over Munster. Sharks have always been poor on the road, no matter who's donning the black jersey over there. So back at home at the Shark Tank, I expect sort of a relatively full crowd. Munster traveling across to Durban, it's not an easy trip to make. You're dealing with sort of 25 degrees Celsius, humidity, sporadic rainfall, all of the conditions over in one day over here. -5.5. That Sharks pack is going to absolutely bully Munster sort of off the park in this one. Hopefully that's sort of the passes stick and the conversions sit here, because for me the Sharks -5.5 is an absolute cracker. I've also taken a firm liking to that Sharks -2.5 halftime cap. I do expect the Sharks to come out like absolute house on fire and really just put the ball into the right areas of the park, sort of assert that physical dominance in the early parts of the fixture here. So two big fancies for me on this game, and it's both the full-time handicap and the half-time handicap.
It's a nice confident picks there by Thoughts on Sports. Just a reminder, guys, if you like the channel, give us a like. Last week we got a lot of likes, and we actually picked up quite a few subscribers, which is nice. Helps us grow the channel a lot. We're going to stay with Neil for the next game, and I've got to stroll up the page. This should be an absolute belter of a match. It's the Stormers against Harlequins, and Neil -7.5 the Stormers. But gee, the Harlequins such a dangerous side, and this should really be one not to miss.
Yeah, Brent, I'll be in the stadium for this one with hopefully a Heineken 0 in hand for this one. So looking forward to it. It's going to be an absolute humdinger that we got over here. But for me, this very much plays into, as weird as it sounds, it plays into sort of the Harlequins' hands and the type of rugby that we can expect. Cape Town Stadium, yeah, the turf's a bit sort of shoddy, and it's obviously digs up, not ideal for scrum time, but it's very much, the weather's looking fantastic over in Cape Town. Very mild. You're going to expect sort of 24, 25 degrees Celsius. So clear conditions expected on Saturday. Nice big stadium. It's going to be fantastic. I think you're expecting about 40,000 or so people to support the Stormers here. This is the type of rugby that Harlequins absolutely love. They love to play in big stadiums. They love to sort of come up against oppositions. They're going to look to spread the ball. They're going to play sort of end-to-end type rugby. Look to really move that big sort of the Stormers forward pack. If they can stay away from the set pieces in this game, I quite like the Harlequins to cover in this one. There's so many sort of attacking weapons throughout, the likes of Estes and Smith, Marchant, and co. I really do believe that the Harlequins can make a feast of this. They love the European nights. They love the European rugby. Stormers, I feel like they could get sort of the jitters in their first home quarterfinal in Champions Cup rugby. So I do expect a narrow Stormers victory, but I do expect the Harlequins to cover the spread.
Yeah, should be good. But a quick one before we go to Darren. What do you think? We haven't got a points line yet, Neil. But when I think of this Harlequins side, I always think of points. And I think they played well. Which South African team did they play earlier in the season? It was like 39-32 or something along those lines.
Against the Sharks, yeah.
Against the Sharks, hey. I wouldn't be surprised to see something similar here. Are you expecting a high scoring game, or what sort of line would you be expecting for Harlequins points?
Between you and me, if I was a bookmaker, I'd cap this points line at about 39.5.
Yes, I love that. Come on, bookmakers, please oblige for us there. WJ is saying he's taken the +8.5, and Quins will score the Stormers this week. Do you mean they'll beat the Stormers there, Croton? Sorry, you guys will notice I took my glasses off. I think I'm going to put them on. GZM. Never start wearing glasses, because once you start, you actually can't get by without them. Right, Darren, this is a cracking game. Are you going to be at the ground?
Unfortunately, not this weekend. My friends didn't want to go with me, so I guess I'll be watching on TV. But it's going to be a cracking game, probably the game of the weekend for me. Like you mentioned, I would love to see a points line, especially for the Harlequins, because I will definitely be taking that. I do fancy the Quins on the plus. Like Neil mentioned, it's going to be a great game. Fantastic conditions in Cape Town, lots of running rugby. I guess I'd have to back the Harlequins with Marcus Smith, Easthuizen, and yeah, just the rugby they play is perfect for this kind of encounter.
Yeah, I must say, just even talking to you guys, I found myself leaning towards something on the Harlequins. Certainly we'll be looking at their overs on points. Right, let's go on to the next game. Darren, I'm going to stay with you. Leinster minus 15.5 against Ulster. I am, of course, and hitting the wrong side. I am, of course, proudly wearing my Leinster jersey here. But 15.5, I mean, Ulster are pretty strong themselves. Is this handicap too big?
I actually think it might be a little bit big. Having looked at the weather, it looks like it's going to be raining on Saturday night in Leinster. So I would fancy Ulster to cover the 15.5. Typical Irish derby. Ulster have a pretty good team. It's not quite as stacked with Irish internationals as Leinster, but they have McCloskey returning and Rob Herring. So I think I would fancy Ulster to cover that spread.
Right, Ulster plus 15.5 says Darren. And thoughts on sports?
Yeah, Brent, I quite like Ulster to cover this one. I think I stand to be corrected, but I do believe the game's getting played over at sort of the Irish international ground over in Dublin. There, weather looks absolutely miserable over there. This is going to be sort of an absolute tussle. And these sorts of fixtures between Irish derby, Ulster always sort of stand up there. Leinster, I think Mark Dunphy's mentioned no Ringrose, no Sexton, but we must not forget that sort of the factory that Leinster do produce and sort of the bench players that they do have. So that doesn't sort of sway me off too much. That doesn't impact the handicap too much. That sort of news is out and open. It's no secret whatsoever. And the handicap hasn't moved absolutely whatsoever here. But I think it's going to be a tussle between two sort of juggernauts of Irish rugby. I'd expect sort of a scoreline between sort of the likes of 26-19 or 26-17, that sort of the likes. So with that in mind, I really do fancy Ulster. They're going to absolutely slow this game down. Dwayne Familia is going to be a menace, and Geordie Murphy is going to be a menace at the breakdown there. Going to look to disrupt Leinster sort of any opportunity here. Leinster, I feel like those Irish players could still be supporting a slice of headaches from the celebrations that took place after that Six Nations victory. All eyes on the World Cup later in the year. So I just think a couple of sort of different things floating through the minds of the Irish players at the moment. So happy to take Ulster on the plus in this one.
So we've always got a saying that when the undertaker takes an overs bet, you follow him. And Johan likes Ulster, but let me tell you, when Mark Dunphy likes the opposition on the handicap, you've got to take it very seriously because he is, of course, a big Leinster man. So Ulster on the handicap seems to be a very popular bet there at the moment with punters. Let's stay with you, Neil, for the next game. La Rochelle minus 18.5 against Gloucester. Yeah, I had a look at this game. I didn't really know what to make of it. To me, it looked pretty well handicapped.
Yeah, Brent, this is exactly where I handicapped the game, so spot on here. I think for me, the big interesting thing will be where sort of Gloucester points come out. If I can get sort of an 18.5 for Gloucester, I'll look to take an unders on that one. La Rochelle have absolutely ridiculous defence in the top 14. You mustn't sort of underestimate what they can produce. Second of all, it's an immensely tough ask to go over to France and play a knockout fixture, especially when sort of your home league form hasn't been at the best. So I do think that Gloucester, not too much sort of to gain from this fixture. La Rochelle is such a powerhouse of French rugby, obviously the perennial champions from last season and overturning Leinster in the final last year. So much sort of good news coming out of La Rochelle rugby over the last sort of 5 seasons of rugby. But they've turned into an absolute force of French rugby. So minus 18.5. I'm not gonna put too many coins on it, but it'll definitely be. I'll definitely side with minus in this one. But sort of more looking to look for a Gloucester unders in this.
Right, Darren, yourself, anything on this one?
Not too many strong fancies. I probably would back La Rochelle on the minus if I had to, but nothing too big in this particular game.
Yeah, I mean, it is that sort of a weekend, isn't it? You don't have to punt every match because there's just so many games. In fact, if you do punt every match, you're probably going to get yourself into some sort of trouble. Right, Darren, we'll stick with you for the next game, though. Exeter Chiefs -8.5 against Montpellier. Always challenging to know what sort of attitude the French team is going to bring on the road. And interested to see your views on this one.
Yeah, I'm not too confident on this one either. Once again, I'd probably back the Chiefs at home, but no major fancies on that particular game.
Just going back to the, onto this one, Mark Dumpy saying, so the previous game, La Rochelle, an easy bet there. But Neil, anything for you on this Exeter Chiefs? I mean, I just feel to me the Chiefs just haven't looked like, in the last few games I've watched them play, they haven't looked quite as good as they have in seasons past. But they're certainly capable of beating this handicap.
Yeah, Brent, this is a tricky fixture. There's just a lot happening behind the scenes over in Devon with the Exeter Chiefs. So many outgoings behind the scenes. Rob Bax has got a massive task on his hands, sort of overturning this Chiefs squad. Most of sort of the marquee players are heading out at the end of the season, likes of Sam Simmons and Luke Handicap actually heading across to Montpellier. Jack Knowles features up in the air, sort of. They've been trying to tie down Henry Slade to a new contract. That's sort of up in the air as well. So lots of sort of uncertainties happening over in the Chiefs. Sandy Park has been an absolute fortress for the Chiefs in seasons gone by. I think back to that 2020 Champions Cup heroics the Chiefs were able to produce, but they really just haven't hit the heights of that sort of season. Whereas Montpellier, on the other hand, are just sort of a dark horse in this type of competition. A team that's it's just, you just don't want to put too many coins behind them because you just don't know what sort of motivation that they put in. But I quite fancy Montpellier on the plus here. I've watched a couple of the Exeter Chiefs games, especially in recent weeks, because I've been targeting this fixture, and they just really haven't looked the part. They travelled away to Bath last weekend as 5-point favourites and were just completely blown off the park. Weren't able to, absolutely no game management, and it was a relatively strong Chiefs side here. So playing against the Montpellier side, which are quite a tricky opposition, I can't see them winning by more than a converted try. So this fixture is going to be really good completely down to the wire here. I think Montpellier will really be fancying their chances against a wounded Exeter Chiefs side, and especially a side that hasn't looked anywhere close to the peak in recent seasons. So I think that plus 8.5 is some cracking value for Montpellier here.
Yeah, I was going to say, the way you're talking there, Neil, I'm starting to smell a bit of an upset in that one there. Let's move on to the next game. Saracens -13.5 against the Ospreys. Neil, I'll stick with you.
Yeah, Brent, the Ospreys are a bit of a funny one. For some unbeknown reason to myself, I quite strongly oppose them over the December period. Whenever I saw their team sheets, I just didn't think that they could put in performance. But they went on an absolute mercurial run, overturning sort of French opposition away from home. They beat Montpellier away from home. I think it's one of the first times the Welsh sides won in the champion group stage away from home in a couple of years. So they put in some absolutely massive performances. So, but I just think that traveling away to the Stonex Stadium against sort of a fired-up Saracen side, I'm sort of on the cusp of a bit of a Six Nations disappointment. It just doesn't spell good news for Welsh rugby over here. Saracens -13.5. If you're sort of getting this sort of line when they're playing the likes of the Northampton Saints, or if I had to think about it, probably even bigger if you had to play the Newcastle Falcons. If you're welcoming the Ospreys to your home turf at -13.5, less than 2 converted tries, with a full-string Saracen side looking to blow them out the water, I think that you have to take the home side on the minus in this one.
WJ is saying he took the early -11. Then I must say, I was interested in what you were saying there on that one, Neil, because I also was very much, when I looked at this line, I thought it looked a little bit low. Darren, has this line caught your eye at all?
Yeah, I have to agree. I do fancy the Saris in this game. The Ospreys have been very good this season, surprisingly, but away from home, I think it could be tough on an artificial pitch. I think it could be a long afternoon for the Ospreys.
Yeah, I think we're very much aligned on that one. Let's stick with you, Darren, for the next game. It's our final Champions Cup game. There's been quite a bit of talk about this one on Twitter, and I think it was Southpaw who came in at on the Good for the Game forum +18.5 for Bulls, if I'm not mistaken there. Toulouse -17.5 against the Blue Bulls. I mean, the Blue Bulls, they were better for patches last week, but ultimately didn't get the job done. And can they come out now in France and trouble this Toulouse side, who on paper look absolutely superb?
Yeah, this is a bit of a difficult one, Brent, because I would say they should cover it with their team on paper, but they don't play like the team that's on paper. They're very much like the Sharks. They're very hot and cold. So I think I would have to say Toulouse on the minus. Maybe look at a first half minus for Toulouse. But yeah, I think Toulouse are going to come out strong out the blocks and blow the Blue Bulls away.
So if you're looking at a first half handicap there, you're probably looking around about -8.5. You might be lucky even to get about a -7.5 there. Let's go to you then. Thoughts on sports on this one? Are you with Southpaw on the Bulls plus, or do you think Darren's closer with his Toulouse minus?
No, Brent. I think Southpaw will be sweating quite heavily on a cold Sunday night over in the UK there. So I just think that for the Bulls, I do understand sort of the sentiments for the plus here, that they've had a fantastic preparation in being over in France for 8 or so days here. This is coming up against the Toulouse side over in sort of Champions Cup knockout rugby. They love this competition. They've been quite sore in the past about not winning it in the last couple of years here. So I just think this Bulls side, they're in for a bit of a rude awakening. For me, the big thing lies in that sort of Bulls defense. They just constantly ship points, no matter who they play against, unable to sort of keep it into a bit of a scrap. If this game develops into a bit of a scrap, I'd like to think that the Bulls would cover the spread, but I can't see it being that way. The French superstars love the big stage. Against the Bulls, travelling away to France, it's already a massive, tough ask. You're getting a 17.5 point handicap, and I think that's quite generous to the Bulls in this one. So to lose -17.5 for me.
Right, well, Southpaw, I know you do watch the show. I think it's normally on a Friday morning when you watch it, and you're going to be getting some worrying news there from the camp on that one. Right, that's the end of the Champions Cup. We will obviously come back for best bets at the end of the show. But let's push on with the Currie Cup. We've got 4 matches taking place this weekend. The Currie Cup certainly, well, I've quite enjoyed it. I've done fairly well on the Currie Cup, but it's not always that easy to certainly set the handicaps. And Neil, I'll start with you here. We've got the Griffins plus 18.5 against the Bulls. The Griffins, without a victory, they looked pretty good against the Lions for long periods of time, but ended up going down by about 15 points, I think. And here we got them plus 18.5 at home.
Yeah, Brent, that's not enough for this Griffin side. It's very much it's a semi-professional outfit. All due respect to the rugby lovers over in Falcom, but it's not going to be sort of a happy Friday that you're going to experience. This Bull side's been wounded. The Tick side can't get a win. The senior side can't get a win. The Currie Cup side can't get a win. But unfortunately, that's going to change to tomorrow at about 3:00. This Bull side is going to absolutely romp home against this Griffin side. I wouldn't be surprised to win by 35 points plus. This is up there with my best bet in the Currie Cup. That it's got to be. If I haven't seen a points line for this, but if you can get any sort of Bulls line in the 30s, that's a banker. Take the Bulls overs on offer here. They're going to absolutely smoke this Griffin side. So yeah, very very confident on this Bulls minus.
I did see a post on the forum just before the show, and I think it was Mondo made the post, and I could be wrong, but it was something like over 37.5 or 38.5 points. I haven't seen it locally, so that might be an overseas line, and I've got a feeling it's not going to hang around very long. Certainly anything in the 30s here, Neil, I'll be all over, absolutely all over it. And after a nice, confident pick like that from Neil, Darren's quickly scratched out the fact that he thought Griffins would win the game on the board. Darren, difficult to oppose Neil after motivation like that.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree. After watching the Griffins last week against the Lions, they were good for 60 minutes, but the last 20, you could see they just weren't there physically. Their fitness was not there, so they're leaking points. I expect the same this week. I can't see them keeping up with the Bulls for the full 80. Maybe they might keep it to 10, 15 points in the first 60, but after that, I can see them falling away.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it was quite apparent last week against the Lions. And I'd even go further to say that, a team like the Griffins, they're now playing their, fourth successive match, So they're also getting to the stage of the season where injuries are starting to take their toll. And I don't believe that they necessarily have quite the same conditioning of a union like the Blue Bulls, even though the Bulls, of course, themselves are fairly stretched. Darren, we're going to stay with you here. When I handicapped this game, I got it horribly wrong. And the reason is, I didn't realize that the Cheetahs were playing in the Challenge Cup. So thank goodness I'm not a bookmaker, because I would have been absolutely cleaned out. I think I went like Cheetahs minus 12.5 or something. So, in fact, then the line opened the other way at about Pumas, I think, plus 11.5. And the money has just swamped in for the Pumas here to the point that we've got a line now, Darren, of 20.5.
Yeah, this is a bit of a difficult one, Brent, because I've been looking at the Cheetahs team, and there's still some good players in there. It's not like it's a complete B-side, but Yeah, I would probably go for the Pumas on the minus, but I'm not entirely confident. I haven't been as impressed with them this season as they were last season, but yeah, they should be able to cover that. I'm not sure what time kickoff is,
What
whether
time,
it's an
Neil? Do you
early
know what
kickoff
time?
or
I would
not.
imagine this is like a 4:00 or so because it's the second game.
5 o'clock kickoff.
5:00. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
Neil, just
I
to bring
think
you in on this one, I mean, I wouldn't argue with any of the money that's come for the Pumas there. And in fact, look, I haven't actually looked at the sites, but I can't get that Pumas hammering of the Bulls out of my mind at Loftus in the first week. And the other thing I'm thinking is if the Cheetahs, if they've taken a squad, 24 players out of it, the Cheetahs themselves are a bit of a battling union at the moment. I don't think they've got too many players on their books. So I'm thinking that this could be an awful blowout for the Cheetahs. What are your views?
Yeah, Brent is an interesting one because I was obviously like looking for that early value on sort of any Pumas single-digit minus that I can get, but Christmas only comes in December, so that wasn't to be. But I think that you're getting a 21.5 point handicap, and I had a gander at that Cheetah side. Honestly, it's not the worst Cheetah side that I've ever seen. So there were a couple of players there who sort of I was quite surprised to see them in the mix. So I don't know. I'm quite cautious on the handicap. I wouldn't run up to sort of jump on this Pumas minus. And we know with the Pumas and the Griquas and these sorts of sides in the Currie Cup, they hate these big minuses. They like to be backed especially as underdogs. That's when you really can get behind these sorts of sides. So, to be honest, I'm going to go for a bit of a left side call. And I actually think the Cheetahs cover this spread. But for me, the main interest is definitely on points. I've seen a Cheetahs points line of 18.5. And I'm going to be taking a big strike on that overs there. I think that's a cracking punt.
That's interesting. And both of you mentioned the Cheetah's not as weak as expected, which I must say, yeah, it does. It surprises me. So I'll definitely have a good look at team news there. I mean, once again, Rian, who we now think might be Oracle's love child, coming in, borrow money from Granny. Cheetahs on the board. So Rian and Oracle, we got to have you guys on the show together someday. So yeah, we got the big cap there. I'm going to come in with you there, Neil, on the next game. Golden Lions plus 2.5 against the Sharks. Two very depleted teams going up against each other here.
Yeah, Brent, I like the Sharks quite strongly in this fixture. It's just a classic case of squad depth at play here. I know the Sharks have been awful in Currie Cup, but they've really just haven't sort of proved their worth here. But the Sharks side have got a lot of good players over on their books. Both sort of senior sides away on their respective duties. Lions playing against Racing 92 and the Sharks obviously at home against Munster. So sort of similar, I guess you could say, 25-man squads out of the running for selection for this fixture. And if you sort of have to sift down to the B category here, you're getting a very much a inexperienced Lions outfit, which you were only able to turn on the hammer against the Griquas against the Griffins in the last 20 minutes here. Whereas the Sharks side definitely pulled a strong performance against the Western Province over at the Shark Tank last Sunday. So at minus 2.5, this is an absolute cracker for me. This Shark side is going to absolutely stink home in this handicap. So full value on the spread for me in this one. And just to the listeners out there, please don't murder the line before I can get a chance to get on
it. Please don't. All right, Darren, what do you think here?
Yeah, no, I have to agree. I was quite impressed with the Sharks last week. And as Neil mentioned, the squad depth between these two unions is pretty incomparable. Where the Sharks have Fred Zeilinger, the Lions have Quinn or whatever his name is, someone Isaacs. He's just not the kind of 10 you need at Currie Cup level. I can't see the Lions sticking with the Sharks in this game. So big fancy on the minus 2.5.
Expect this line to go out. Now, if you haven't subscribed yet to our weekly newsletter where we cover the best bet on a decent run at the moment. I think I had Hurricanes over 40.5 points last week. It took a bit of a while to get going and then eventually arrived against the Pacifica. Anyway, this has definitely got every chance of featuring there. There is a link down below and also a link to the forum thread that we talk about as well. Right, let's stay with you, Darren. For the last game, we got Western Province minus 5.5 against the Griquas. Just looking at this handicap, it doesn't seem to have moved too much, but I get the feeling there's a bit of money for the Griquas. What are your views?
So this is the game I'll be looking for points. Hopefully we can get a nice low points line. I know they're playing after the Harlequins game, so there should be good conditions. Hopefully the Western Province can turn it on. I haven't been too impressed with the Griquas. I don't think their squad is that strong, and they don't traditionally do too well away at Western Province. So I think I'd have to fancy Province on the minus, but I'll definitely be looking for points in this game.
Yeah, Province for me a bit disappointing last week, but I'm with you. I'm leaning towards them on the minus because, like you, I just haven't been that convinced by this Griquas side this year. I mean, Griquas have often been a punter's favourite. And Neil, what are your thoughts on this one? Are you going to go with Province for 3 out of 3 for us, or are you going to go Griquas?
Yeah, Brent, it's weird. This is probably my toughest call over in the Currie Cup here. I think this handicap started at about 9.5. Money's obviously flown in for the Griquas. I think that was probably the correct call. But I do expect sort of a slightly decent Currie Cup crowd just because this is getting played sort of straight after the Stormers Harlequins game. So there should be a couple of sort of intoxicated supporters who hang around unknowingly to them to watch another great game of rugby. So at 5.5, it's tricky because also the benefit that the Western Province do have is that once again, Stormers sort of training with a 25-man squad. Any sort of surplus players will get released, flow down to that Currie Cup side. So I think over the top of my head, the likes of sort of Jean-Luc Duplessis, who's probably featured on the Stormers bench a couple of times, could be in line to start in that 12 jumper for Province there, which is a big boost here. Once again, this Griquas side, they hold no prisoners. They don't care about the travel. It doesn't affect them at all. They could walk by foot over down to Cape Town here, and they'll be fresh as daisies for this type of fixture. So 5.5, I definitely do think that Province is the right way to go here, but not a lot of confidence in this one. I'll definitely be looking at a points play. But with that in mind, I have seen a points of 58.5, so an overs for me on that. Right,
yeah, I tend to agree with you there. Pierce saying Province are going to get 5 players back from the touring squad. He's expecting them to be too strong. So all 3 of us effectively liking them on the handicap. Let's just go through your Huns weekly treble before we get into the best bets. Force plus 20.5, Ulster plus 15.5, Sharks minus 2.5. I must say, Johan, based on what we've heard on the show, I think there are going to be a lot of people following you on that treble, and it's probably going to form some of the good for the game accumulator in the newsletter, no doubt about that. Right, let's get into the best bets. Just before that, if you do enjoy the show, give us a like. It really does help the channel. I was, as I say, last week we did put this message up, and it actually brought in quite a few subscribers. I don't know how YouTube's algorithm works, but somehow or other it makes a difference if the show gets likes. Right, let's go on to best bets now. And Darren, I'm going to start with you. Your best bets for the weekend.
So from Super Rugby, I'd definitely say the Rebels over versus the Drua. I fancy that. I think that'll come in hopefully quite easily. And then in the Champions Cup, a big fancy on Ulster 15.5. I think that'll be a cracking close contest. And then one other game we haven't mentioned that I quite like is Toulon minus 9.5 versus the Cheetahs.
Okay, that's a Challenge Cup. Okay, yes, let's continue. Yeah. Let's discuss that. So we've got the Challenge Cup because I didn't see odds on that. So it's Toulon minus 9.5.
Minus 9.5, yeah.
Okay, against the Cheetahs in the Challenge Cup. And as a matter of interest, have you seen a handicap on the Lions game?
I have not seen anything on the Lions game yet, no.
Neil, anything that you've seen on the Challenge Cup? I actually clean forgot about it.
Yeah, no handicap odds on the Lions Racing game. I think they feel the likes of me to pounce on those sort of handicaps. So they're keeping the cards close to the chest.
Right, yeah, you don't want to mention anything. I know Henrik, we had a similar conversation earlier in the week. There was some information that he preferred not to share with everyone. As I said earlier, hoping the bookies wouldn't pick up on it. Right, Neil, your best bets.
Brent, I'm gonna stick to a couple of the firm favourites here. That Sharks minus 2.5 is an absolute stinker for me. I absolutely love that. Then that's that Bulls minus 39.5. Sorry, that Bulls over 39.5. I guess you could also take minus 39.5. That's also a great bet. But that Bulls over 39.5 is an absolute cracker. I'm all over that. And then just to sort of add a bit of spice in the different competitions, I haven't seen that Cheetahs Toulon handicap, but I would definitely sink my teeth into that Toulon minus 9.5. But just in the Champions Cup, I do like that Ulster plus quite strongly. And then just to add one more over in Super Rugby, to be honest, it seems like a tricky roster that we got up ahead, but that force plus 20 or 21.5, I think is a big standout for me.
Right, excellent. And our newsletter will be going out tomorrow, so you can pick up my best bets there. But the boys have certainly given me plenty to think about. Kamal saying good luck with the punting, guys. And WJ is saying there was some Bristol -5 hanging about. There's Clermont. That's also, of course, at Challenge Cup fixtures. That brings us to the end of the show, guys. I've got to say I'm impressed. I didn't count how many games we got through, but we did very, very well, I think, to get through what we did in under an hour. Darren, great to have you back on the show, and I'm sure you're going to be spending some time with your mates this weekend, and nice to see them supporting you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brent. I could hopefully make some money this weekend, and yeah, hopefully I can convince my mates to go to the rugby with me.
Excellent. Yes, otherwise just give Neil a shout. I'm sure he'll let you sit next to him. Reverend in New Zealand saying thanks, guys. And Neil, thanks to you, mate. Always nice to get the message from you that you got a bit of time to come on the show. Lovely having you on, and a good punting weekend for you.
Yeah, Brent, absolutely cracking weekend of rugby. There's plenty of time to lose money on a Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday. So looking very much forward to the weekend's action. So enjoy it out there, lads.
Right. WJ is saying the master and the apprentice. We're just not sure which one's which. But anyway, guys, thanks very much. That was great. To all the boys in the love chat, excellent contributions as usual. We'll see you next week, 9 o'clock Thursday, for the Handicap Rugby Chat That Matters.